Tommy Fargrin.
Tommy Fargrin.
Hello, sheeple, and welcome to your weekly acid trip. This, of course, is Sheep on Acid, or in the spirit of what we're covering today, Cuera Aged, which is in Irish for Sheep on Acid. The factual podcast with very few facts. Is anything real? Who knows? Who knows? I'm your host, Miguel, and I'm joined as usual by Jason, Oren, and Diron. Now, before we start, we must issue a disclaimer. This show is generally aimed at adults. So, in the spirit of adults, if there's any children in the room, what I want you to do is get your best lube, cover them in it, and then slide them across the tile floor head first into a wall in order to render them unconscious so they cannot listen to this podcast. Unfortunately, you may run out of lube as well, which for other adult purposes, you might want to get more. But may I suggest a very cost-effective lube in order to do this is cattle birthing lube. So, you know, for industrial levels of birthing, you know, new baby cows and whatnot, that lube is quite cheap and plentiful in the bottle. So there you go. That is the disclaimer this time round. If that doesn't tell you what to expect in the podcast, I don't know what will. But yeah, just basically get your children out of the room. We don't want them in here. Anish Jason, Cod a rev I don't even know what I said there. Anish Jason, Cod a rev me the kind fui and Shockton Shakata.
Thanks for that life lesson there, Mike.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You know where to get cheap birthing lube.
I've never told this before. This is the things I really need to know in life, you know?
And you know, it's safe for you to use in the bedroom too, Jason.
Last time on Sheep on Acid, we discussed Foxconn and all the shenanigans and funness that goes on in that place, and our thoughts on consumerism. So if you're into any of that crack, listen to episode 5. Episode
4. So you're telling me that you thought that suicide nets were fun. Interesting.
Funness.
No, you're a horrible person. We already discussed this
Hints
last
of
week.
fun.
You haven't gotten nicer. You're still evil. So this week we are going to discuss Irish mythology and folklore. And so with that, I pass you over to our resident historian and an actual lord of a province, Ball.
Lord of a country, actually.
Sorry, country, of course.
Yeah,
do you want to tell us? I will do an episode of that country, I think, at some point. Sealand.
Definitely deserves. And,
it definitely deserves an episode.
Yeah, King Michael. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So this week we are discussing, we're looking into a bit of mythology, Irish mythology and folklore. A lot of these stories we won't go into too much detail, and it'll be a couple like probably the main versions you would have heard. Now again, if you look into this in your own time, you'll see there's tons of different versions, variations, and some we were discussing before we started recording, like with different endings and stuff.
Into the Bluetooth.
Not your sex robot.
The Bluetooth versions don't really come up in most history.
Really not. That was a cheap Chinese portable speaker that just comes on and off every few hours.
It's probably watching.
If you want to know where that's made, tune into episode 4.
Yes. Well played, Jason.
I'm on that quick.
But that's terrifying when it happens like now when it's, you know, it's middle, like say nighttime and stuff.
It's because it's watching you.
8:00 in the morning. It's fucking terrifying.
Initiate kill sequence.
Oh wait, I'm still just a speaker. Anyway, sorry, Darren.
Go back to it. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that. So yeah, we're going to go into a brief general kind of summary of all some of the main stories, kind of this different cycles of Irish folklore and mythology. We're trying to space it out between us all so you won't hear one person talking too much. And maybe if we get a chance, we'll leave a link in the description to some of like the websites that done like, you know, that pull up the actual stories and links and stuff. And you can dive into the rabbit hole yourself. Just one thing we are going to clear up before we start. Myself and Michael are from Leinster, so our dialect of Irish would be a bit different.
Whoa.
Nope.
Jason's also from Leinster.
I'm also from Leinster.
Where are you from?
He's also from Leinster.
Where are you from?
From the very, 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 very south of Kilkenny.
Which is Waterford. Which is Munster.
And you just lost the All-Ireland. Shame on you.
Yeah. So I think, Eoin, you're going to jump in and just give us a quick, brief kind of breakdown of language and stuff, because you're probably the language expert here.
So what? There's a good few dialects across Ireland, and like I couldn't really tell you any example. I guess is it Northern Irish has like Kenqui and a will to, and we would have Conistá too.
I think
for how are you
and stuff. I think
so. Yeah, Connacht Irish would be Kenqui too, and Munster then would be Conistá too. Technically speaking, Leinsterian Irish is no longer really considered a dialect. It was just kind of a very light version of Munsterian.
Okay.
So it's actually not really recognized. So there is obviously Ulsterian, say, Connacht Irish, and then Munster Irish. There, if you go on to folklore.ie, which anyone who has any interest in the Irish language, I would highly encourage it. Folklore.ie is really good, really, and just for going through this as well, if you want to like figure out words that you hear Darren talking about, or Owen talking about, or Jason talking about, it also gives you pronunciations, and that's the interesting bit on there. It gives you pronunciations in Connacht, Munster, and Ulster. There probably once was a distinct Leinster dialect, but because it was so thinned out here due to the influence of the Pale in this part of the country, it's not really a thing anymore, sadly.
So can you link that? What was it called? What was the website?
Folklore.ie. I'll link it in the description.
Come on. All right, Owen, can you... You're going on again?
I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, you know, it's kind of each province has a dialect. And then I would say as you get probably into like the Gaeltachts in like Galway and Kerry, they probably have even more specific dialects. But generally, we can all talk to each other. There's no major differences across the Irish. I guess going back to like our Leaving Cert exam when we were 18, the only Irish that we ever seemed to kind of have trouble with would be on the listening exam. The northern accents could sometimes kind of throw up a different sound of the language altogether. So there's variations in it like any language, but we can all kind of talk to each other. So we should all understand what we're.
I can't understand a lot of Kerry people. Just
it's kind of the extreme edges of the country. Like.
Well, that is a really good point, though. What Owen said is there is actually like pockets of Irish in places like where what Owen said about the Gaeltachts, where you'd have like really strong Gaeltachts. One in Donegal, one in Galway, one in Kerry, and there's also Ring in Waterford. They would have people who've lived there and who have had generations of full time Irish speakers would have very strong and particular accents, whereas some words actually would not be shared. They wouldn't be common words. Say that they would have over time developed their own word for particular thing, because a lot of modern
they're so
Irish
isolated.
and a lot of modern Irish words are anglicized. They're from English, so they're anglicized words.
Yeah, and so like with these different areas, basically like with these different areas and different dialects, you will get these different variations of these kind of folklore tales and these myths. So again, if you are clicking to any website and if you hear something that's different to our version, there's hundreds of them. Don't worry about that.
And like we were going to say as well, so like the way these stories were kind of passed on, it was an oral tradition. So like it was kind of storyteller would come around the town, go into different houses and pass on the story. But like that story could vary from town to town.
Yeah,
through ages, like, and a story could be dialed back for children or around that kind of way. So even I'd say most of the stories we heard as we were kids were probably like the very safe versions for kids, whereas like some of this Irish mythology is like there's horrific stuff goes on in it.
Oh yeah. And even like if you look at it, all of those stories were the quintessential. They were bard stories, weren't they? They're firelight stories, a lot of them. So yeah, they definitely varied a lot depending on the mood and the drunken level of the bard.
And just another thing to point out, so like a lot of these stories, certain versions we know now as well, because the only written texts we have of these stories are coming from that kind of Christian area. Like before this, as Owen said, it was all oral tradition. It was only when like Christianity came that these were written down. So a lot of these stories have Christian elements thrown into it just to make the Christianity kind of fit in, basically.
The force of God into the story.
We'll get to it in a bit about.
So, Darren, are you saying that they've slipped in Jesus's penis into the stories?
No, just his foreskin. No.
Much like we
Listen
slipped
to
into
episode
every
1.
episode.
We got it in there.
Yeah.
Just like he did.
Yeah. So I think with that, then we're kind of moving on. And just before we start, Michael, I think since you grew up, like your primary school was an Irish speaking school.
Sí, por supuesto.
Yeah. So I think
In Spain.
yeah, maybe it's a bad idea. I was going to make Michael like the Irish corrector person because my Irish is shocking. Moan is out of practice of a J. How's your Irish?
0.
Yeah. There you go. So I was going to put Michael but then again, if he's going to speak Spanish, there's
no. I will. I'll do Irish. And just for anyone interested, my name is actually Mihal. So there you go.
I call your dad Mihal. I don't call you Mihal.
Technically, we're both Mihal, but both of us generally use, Michael or Mick or whatever else.
All right.
Never knew that.
Bollocks.
There you go.
Right. So basically starting off then, we kind of, with Irish mythology, as I said, it was a lot of this is oral tradition. We have a few, not a lot, kind of written sources of evidence about these stories. We have kind of 4 main ones. And kind of what's first thing to break down, there's 4 different cycles of Irish mythology and folklore. First of all, you have your mythology cycle, then you have your Ulster cycle, then you have your Fenian cycle, and then you have your historical cycle. We don't really count the historical cycle because that was when kind of medieval times when bards would come around to kings and like lords and stuff and just fit in these stories around the families that they were singing to just to gain favor. So a lot of these stories are just the same, just with the newer families and stuff. So we don't really care about the historical cycle. Pretty much, yeah. So the first cycle is the mythological cycle, which is our main source for that comes from, in English, called the Book of Invasions. And Michael, going to need your help here. In Irish, it's Lawer Gabala Éireann.
I would imagine that should be pronounced Lawer, so Labhair.
Lawer, yeah.
Gawla or Gavala, possibly Éireann.
Éireann, perfect. Okay, so
Éireann being Ireland.
Ireland, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, Lawer just being book, and then
Gowl being.
Yeah, Gowl.
The only one thing, just before we move on, I'm going to check that because Lawer obviously is book, and I'm going to actually check Invasion because I'm not sure on that one. So 1 second. And again, everyone at home, I am using folklore.ie for this because it is a great website.
When you're looking it up, I'll just continue on. And basically that book,
drive on.
That book is just basically an abridged mashup of like stories and poetry of Irish things. So kind of basically it was told just basically all these stories jumped into one text. Basically, it wasn't. It doesn't even really come from the time because it's kind of a mix and match of all these different pieces of literature, and it was only put together in like the 17th century from different sources and stuff. So it is just, I guess, a book of stories basically. Michael, do you have it? Yeah.
So as I thought, like an invasion was kind of it's actually UNRWA, but I imagine Gaval or whatever, however you pronounce it, is probably Old Irish, which unfortunately a lot of that has actually been lost. Like for instance, in my primary school, there was a very old teacher. He's long since passed away, sadly. Very nice man. And he told me once that where I live, part of the word is och, I-U-G-H. And he told me that och is actually an old Irish word for field. Now, I still can't find it anywhere, but this guy was, from generations of Irish speakers, so it could very well be an old Irish word. And that's something else to bear in mind. Sometimes you will come across Irish words that are actually pretty much not really in common circulation anymore, which happens with every language.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's very interesting, actually. So that's the kind of main source we have for our first, like the earliest cycle. And Jay is going to talk in a bit about what that's kind of all about. So, like, it's weird in Irish mythology, we don't really have like an origin story. Like in the Greek mythology and Egyptian, all that, it's like it starts with almost like a big bang with chaos or something beforehand. In Irish mythology, Ireland always seems to be there. And
obviously.
Yeah, well, it's weird. It's the land is always there, and so as we said, the Book of Invasions, the people living there were seen as invaders to the country. or to the land. So the mythological cycle is mostly about the Tuatha De Danann, which is the fourth invading people, basically. And I think, Jay, you have a bit of kind of background about them, don't you?
Have a bit. I'm actually turned into actually reading this stuff is very interesting. I would have never read this stuff before, but it's actually reading through this. It's class. What are they called? The Tuatha De Danann? Is that the proper?
Tuatha De Danann, yeah.
I'm going to call them the lads, right?
The boys.
From now on.
And the boys.
So these were like these mystical men with like godlike abilities that came to Ireland seemingly on a cloud or on a cloud of smoke.
Just saying that's all we could talk about this for ages.
Yeah, exactly. Like straight away.
Fucking
Aliens.
clouds, the pyramids, aliens, Jesus' foreskin.
Like, end the podcast. You're welcome. So yeah, like there's other kind of theories behind that. It was they actually burned their ships so they couldn't actually leave Ireland. There's multiple different names or theories behind even the name itself. Like one phrase is the people of Danu, like Danu is a goddess. Then the actual goddess Danu, it actually is mentioned in Indian mythology, and it's in what else? The river Danube, which holds many Celtic settlements, and that's a theory where the people actually came from, and that's why they were so advanced, because they actually had all the knowledge of how irrigation works, etc., etc., etc. The second interpretation is that Tua meaning people, and Dan meaning poetry or artistry, something along those lines, where they actually introduced a high culture to Ireland.
Come back closer to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Very sorry, very sorry. And then you can dig deeper into it, where it's the origin. Sometimes it's the origin from the Banshee, meaning Ban is woman, she is hills, or what is it? Is it?
I think we found our first segue, by the way, because Banshees are fucking terrifying.
Fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
So
I was terrified of the Banshee back in the day.
I assume everyone, obviously, these four people here know what a banshee is, but a banshee basically is a screaming wraith. And if you heard the banshees scream, it was really bad because you weren't supposed to hear it unless she was fucking looking for you. And then if you woke up and the banshee's comb was on your windowsill, it meant that someone in your family was gonna die.
There were so many stories with the Banshee, like.
But it's one of those things where like they like, so when they come out now, it's like scientists kind of go, or like these kind of people look back, all right, it was probably they just needed something to explain the winds passing through the moors and the hills and stuff.
Yeah.
And the screaming sounds. It's always
Darren, keep telling yourself that because you heard the screams. Okay, keep telling yourself that. You're terrified.
Lads, I was watching Gargoyles there on Disney Plus there today, and there's an episode came up with, and they were in Ulster, and it was the Banshee. It was a cartoon from the 90s, and like it still freaked me out. It was so
horrifying. I remember when I was a baby child, one of our neighbours who was newly moved in at the time thought it'd be really funny. Now, again, I went to an Irish school, lots of older teachers, all who knew these old legends and used to like scaring the shit out of the kids in their classroom, because they're good teachers. You need to scare children, so you keep them respectful. So I knew all these stories, and anyway, these new neighbours were like, "Oh, you live beside a forest. I can hear the banshee." And apparently I just like flew into a rage, like, "No, you fucking didn't. If you hear the banshee, you're gonna fuck everyone up. You shut the fuck up." It didn't go down well.
Oh, geez.
So basically, Darren, you can tell me if I'm wrong with this, but basically when they came, they were seen as the higher power. There was actually a battle to kind of overthrow that power, and then after that battle, they were segregated into two separate worlds: the above the ground world and the below the ground world.
Yeah,
which is like the fallen angels correlation to God.
Yeah,
basically, Tuatha De Danann were Nazis. They thought they were aliens.
And what's she in Irish? Mike, is it woods? Is it hills? She. Anyway, there's a.
What word are you saying?
As in the second half of Banshee.
Literally the word she.
Oh, Banshee.
It's something like woods or other world or
again, that's
hills or something
probably
like that.
an old Irish word.
Mounds, yeah.
Mounds, that's
mounds,
it, yeah. And that's possibly where the word fairy comes from. Fair she.
Well, the
Man fairy, because that's where the word banshee comes from. Woman, she.
well, the two of the Danann were actually, as I said, we said, were the fourth kind of invaders to Ireland, and that was that they're seen as our main pantheon, if there is a pantheon of gods. They're kind of what we write mainly about. So before them, though, there was, as I said, there was three others, and so when the two of the Danann arrived, they had to have a fight. They fought basically with these guys called the Fear Bolgs, whatever it is. Bolg, yeah, and these were, Fear Bolg, yeah, these were basically, how to I say, just the people that came before, and then when they won their battle. Say, right, the two of the Danann won in the first battle of Mag Tareed or something like that. They elected a king or one of their own to lead the two of the Danann and just bring them on. And they elected this guy called Bresh, and Bresh was actually kind of half two of the Danann, half Fomorian. And now the Fomorians were creatures basically that lived off the coast of Ireland. They weren't on the island, so they were basically where we get kind of demons and these kind of things from. And their king, the leader of the Fomorians, was Balor. So, and he was basically a big evil eye kind of creature. He's very similar to the Cyclops, actually. It's kind of where the crossover happens.
And really interestingly, if people read a lot of like high fantasy or fiction novels, keep an eye out for the word Fomorian, Fomora, Balor, anything like that, because it's across so many things. Like, so this particular section of mythology is embedded in everything to do with demons and demonology and stuff. It's very interesting.
I couldn't believe how much fairies were in it as well when I started looking into it. They're in everything.
Basically, Ireland is actually the birthplace of everything, just saying.
So what happened then was when the two of the Danann beat the Fomorians and Bresh, and so Lugh, the champion of the two of the Danann now, he killed Balor with a slingshot. So he's a giant. He's a one-eyed giant, and he's
Galibander.
What?
Galibander.
That's an underwear string thing.
Oh, you don't know what a Galibander is?
No, I do. Yeah, it's also what you call a thong. No, Galibander.
Right. Well, I was thinking more David and Goliath kind of story, But
yeah, of course, not tongues. Yeah, you were trying to get into serious stuff. Yeah.
And so again, it's one of the things. Did we get that from the Christians, or did the Christians throw that into like?
They definitely stole it from us, because Christians stole everything from everyone and didn't have an original idea in their heads. Just saying.
So, but like Lugh himself is actually linked to the Greek god Apollo, and we think it's where the city of Leon is named after. So. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So it just shows this kind of the outreach this mythology has. And the two of the Danann basically kept going for a while until there was a second battle of Mag Tareed, or whatever it is. Tareed, yeah. And they basically... So it's not the same place, though. Even though they're the same name, the two different battles were fought in two different places. Don't ask me why. So the second battle then was the fifth invaders, then the two of the Danann against the Malaysians, and they were basically.
Did you just say against the Malaysians?
Not the Malaysians.
That's how you say it, Malaysians.
God damn, Malaysians.
No, that's how you spell it. That's how you.
Over here breaking down my shitty wow.
Is it not Malaysians?
Malaysians.
I'm pretty certain it's Malaysians. I don't think it's Malaysians.
No, actually, I prefer.
We can't be blaming the Malaysians. Like that would, in fairness, that would be seriously impressive if they came that far. Malaysians. Yeah.
So wait, the two of the Danann are the lads fighting the Malaysians.
Lads fight the Malaysians.
So
actually, can we just call them the Malaysians the Milshans, because that means sweets? So the lads fighting the sweets. Very confusing.
Yeah, and so basically that ended then with. Where Jay was saying earlier about the two of the Danann decided they in the agreement took the underground world, so the fairy realm basically, like so the underground kind of kingdoms and stuff, and then the Milesians or Milshans, whatever we call them, they took the above ground world then, which is very similar to if any of you looked at or watched or read Game of Thrones, the the children of the forest kind of stuck to the rivers and lakes and underground, while the men stayed in the cities. Kind of the first men stayed in the cities.
It's very similar to Game of Thrones or the second Hellboy movie, isn't it, Darren?
Yes, it is very, very similar.
Isn't it, Darren?
They owe us money.
I think they owe the entire population of Ireland some royalties, Darren.
They should do, yeah.
I think so.
And
what are we going to do about this, Darren?
I don't know. Hopefully, if our
Petition.
podcast goes big, we get it.
Yes, I think so. I think we should do that.
But,
Darren, tell me, Darren, what did you think of the second Hellboy film, Darren?
Shite.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, shite. Although the Irish mythology part in it is very good. Very interesting. But the rest of it, shite, yeah. But yeah, and then later on, kind of when we get on to, that's the mythological cycle. But when we get on to like the Ulster cycle and the Fenian cycle, then you'll see that these Tuatha Dé Danann, even though they are written originally as these gods, they're kind of changed to these men with magical powers, not actually gods. Again, that's the kind of Christian influence on it.
Just as well to point out, I did find it. So the actual text is pronounced Laur Gavala Éireann.
Gavala Éireann.
So it is an old spelling for something, but it is Gavala because technically H wasn't in the Irish language back then. So B was generally with Gov, like Gov Maleshkale.
Oh yes.
Old Irish would have been, without the H, say. Where modern Irish, you'd see the H in there. Due to the influence of Britain.
Okay. For any of our English listeners, not that we don't like you, you just messed us up a lot.
It's not that we don't like you. It's just that, you kind of ruined our country for a long time. Yeah. So we kind of have to get the barbs in when we can.
Yeah. We'd be happier if you didn't exist, like.
Oh, jeez. I won't say that. The kingdom, the United Kingdom, if that didn't exist, great. And, give us back the north. But other than that, it's all in good fun. And if anyone takes this podcast too seriously at all, to be honest, get your head checked. It's a whole thing is generally meant in fun, with some facts maybe hidden in there.
And if you take away from this podcast that you like Jay, who hates history and all that, doesn't see the point of it, who went off and did some research today and actually found it interesting. If you can take that away from this podcast, 100%.
I think we've done our jobs. We've done our jobs. Yeah, actually, if you weren't scared off by the disclaimer and got this far, you've probably learned something, which is great.
Now, so kind of the mythological cycle, lads. Do any of you think you know a story from that cycle? Kind of just to link it all back.
I know a story.
Do you?
Yes.
What is it?
Please stop talking about that.
Yeah.
It is the Salmon of knowledge.
Is that the mythological cycle though, Mike?
I haven't a clue. You tell me.
I think that's later on.
That's later on. Apologies.
Damn it, Mike. Jesus.
Mike.
Just hop in the bucket of lube. Slide out of here for a little while.
Excuse me.
So, the children of the air, that's from the mythological cycle, right, Darren?
That is absolutely correct, Owen. Well done, Owen.
I should have looked at the notes.
The notes. If you're wondering why we're a bit more scripted this week, I sat down on one of my days off and actually
we have a script.
Actually, to script this podcast. It did work.
Props to Darren. The script is actually really good. It's just the problem is we're all idiots.
Yeah.
It's particularly me in this case.
I'm sweating at the palms because there's a script.
Owen, since you brought it up, yes, it is part of the mythological cycle. Care to tell us the story?
So, yeah, it is kind of funny. So, I hadn't read The Children of Lear since I was a kid, and kind of, again, it's like the way we don't learn Irish very well. We learn all these stories when we're kids, but there's no big movies that kind of
we don't learn Irish very well. Why do you hate your heritage?
Yeah.
Nah, look, it's got to
we
don't learn the language very well.
You hate your heritage school.
Yeah. But I think, look, these stories, I don't know if it's just me, but I've forgotten an awful lot of.
Oh yeah, 100%.
These. I think when we were back in primary school, I don't know if had the same thing, but was there a traveling troupe of actors that would come around into your PE hall and act out these kind of things?
Yeah,
those were savage, because
that was a class.
Part of studying history in primary school was learning these stories, and then
does that still happen?
Every couple of months or maybe once a year or whatever, a troupe of actors would come along into the PE hall, act out all these stories, and you got to go watch a play effectively for an hour or whatever. So
Yeah.
that was great. So yeah, I don't think it's for a lack of trying. It's just maybe we don't embrace our heritage.
It's just that some of us hate our heritage.
But yeah, the Children of Lear. So yeah, I hadn't read it in a long time. So it kind of goes along that Lear was a god who wanted to be elected the king of the Tuatha De Danann after the death of the Dagda.
Dagda.
But unfortunately for Lear, he wasn't, and a different fellow named Bove Jarrig was. So everyone else in the Tuatha De Danann kind of swore allegiance to Bove, and Lear was kind of pissed off and said, nope, not going to do that. So to appease Lear, Bove gave Lear one of his daughters and, tried to look, settle down. I'm king now.
As you do.
Have my daughter.
Yeah,
so he gave him his daughter Eve, and they had 4 children together.
Nice.
Plenty of cheap lube used there, I'd say.
But it depends on the version of the story. But you read either Eve dies shortly after giving birth to children or during the birth of children, whatever.
She was used up, wasn't she? You know?
Not enough lube, apparently. But
Oh my god!
And I'm the bad one, huh? Jesus Christ, Don. Continue.
So, so Lear was grief stricken. So Bove decided to give him another one of his daughters, who was named Aoife.
You throwing him out?
Yeah.
Like a set of goujons, like.
How many daughters this man? It's like, oh fuck, she died here. Have another
He
one.
is a god. Like,
Would you just make sure that you go a bit more gently on this one? You want to hang on for a while there. Jesus Christ.
Guys, will you slow down?
So
like four babies, maybe give her 6 years after 4 babies.
So yeah, that's the thing. I think he doesn't have any children by the second wife, Aoife. So Aoife is actually very jealous that. First of all, I think Lear is obsessed with the first set of children. They're beautiful children, and she's also upset that her sister gave birth to these children.
And her womb is barren.
Yeah, whereas she couldn't. So one day she decides to take the children away. She's like, right, we're going for a walk, whatever. She brings kind of her entourage, her troop with her, and she orders them to take their swords and kill the children. They refuse. So she's a bit taken back by that. She brings the children along to a lake and lets the children go play in the lake, and then casts a spell on them that turns them all into swans. So they're still able to speak, but they've been turned into swans. And she's like, right, you're going to be turned into swans now for the next 900 years. And
a reasonable length of time.
So she takes off, goes home. She goes actually back to visit her father, Bove, and he's like, why didn't you bring the grandchildren? I want to see my grandkids, whatever. And he's like, she blames Lear. She says, oh, Lear doesn't want them to be, doesn't think they're worthy of your presence, whatever. And Bove is kind of, nah, this doesn't sound right. This story ends up being communicated back to Lear. Lear realizes something horrible's gone on and eventually meets the children. They explain to him what happened, and Lear rats out Aoife to her dad. She then she gets turned into like a demon, like an air demon. So she's cast out.
One would argue that he just made what was on the inside on the outside.
But yeah, anyway, so she's just gone. But apparently she kind of continues to exist to this day. I haven't looked into that, but she, as an air demon, Aoife, she's still
it's my sister.
Jesus, Mike.
And then as it goes, the swans have beautiful like singing voices. So people come to see them in their lake. They're in the lake for the first 300 years. They're delighted that they're able to like entertain people. Then after that, they have to move to the Straits of Moyle, I believe.
Oh, bad dose, bad place. Not
bad. It's because of development.
So they're there for another 300 years.
Urban sprawl.
And the last set of 300 years, they have to go to an island where they're not able to sing to anyone. So they all get depressed. And I think during this time, they're told that Lear, their father, has died. But at the end of 900 years, then depending on the ending, the story we're given. So that's where
give us the real one, the adult one. We gave the disclaimer.
The fake one is, I think, that the kids remain swans forever, which is kind of creepy as well.
Bullshit. Yeah,
But
it's bullshit.
the 900-year one, I think they wake up or they're turned back into humans, but they're no longer children. 900 years has passed.
Yeah.
Withered and old, and they die.
Yeah, and they die really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a recurrent theme in a lot of Irish mythology stories, where if people are turned, or like they come back, or they kind of reform, they are the older version of themselves, and they just like die like that.
We're realistic
Kieran,
people.
good job.
We're realistic people. You know, those children needed to die after they had their swan at about time. You know.
Supposedly that story like actually influenced Swan Lake as well, and that there's like
More money.
There's like German folktales that are kind of similar in ways, like that about kids being turned into swans. I've never heard of that.
That's some of that is attributed to the kind of the Celts, the fact that the kind of Celts has that far outreach as far as France, as far as Germany, or whatever it was called before that.
Well, the roots of the Irish language are Germanic.
That's true, yeah.
So
we don't know which way it went, but
yeah, exactly, yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much the story of the Children of Lear, which is one of the more kind of it was like a lot of the stories we're going to tell today are pretty much the famous ones.
Mm-hmm.
But that's again another one that's probably the first in the mythological cycle. It's probably the main one that we get from it. But then, like Jay said, if you go deeper down the rabbit hole, there's probably ones that are more important, but not as half as entertaining as that.
I think the main thing to take from the Children of Lear is, if you have daughters, don't just give them away to a man to be used as a broodmare, as eventually they're going to end up upset and turn some children into swans and shit, and then turn into an everlasting demon who probably is outside my window right now glaring at me. It's cool if I'm on your side, bro.
Especially don't give them to a man who's like questioning your authority.
Yeah,
like my authority.
Exactly.
My authority.
One thing I didn't actually mention, I should have mentioned at the start, was in each cycle they have these kind of traits, recurring traits and themes kind of throughout it. So in the mythological cycle, it's all about magic. So in each story, it's magic that turns the tide or changes, or basically is the narrative kind of piece, basically that brings the story along.
And that's what Harry Potter is based on. Fuck's sake, more money.
More money.
A lot of those Harry Potter creatures and fairies and stuff are based off Irish mythology as well.
But when she wrote those, wasn't she pretty much like homeless and just probably listening to drunk homeless people on the street tell stories?
I know
most of whom were probably Irish.
She was in the story she tells us, she was in some train station and she just got the idea of looking out like at the trains or something.
She probably beat up some poor hobo and stole his stories.
Yeah, but it's okay. We don't like her now because she's homophobic and shit, isn't she?
Actually, that's what she did. She found an up and coming transgender author who was just minding her own business, writing some cool stories, and she beat the shit out of them, spat in them, and stole their books.
Oh my god!
Well, she cannot deny that because
And the best part is we're not going to name the author, so it can't be done for libel.
Yes. Lol.
Everything in this podcast is a joke. Do not sue us.
Right. And we'll go on then. And like that's the
hobos can't prove each other wrong. Like,
there's definitely some hobo out there now, just like I wrote her.
I would have been rich.
I just want to spend that ras wine.
It was actually Mick Potter.
So with that kind of brings the end of the mythological cycle, and we move on to the next one, which is the Ulster cycle. Now, with the Ulster cycle, the theme or the trait throughout it is just basically pure violence. It's like
bro.
It's literally like the most bloody kind of gory thing that we like as a country have ever produced. Basically,
Junior Hurling.
Literally every story has a death, a massacre, or like a mass suicide in it. It's actually incredible how dark it is.
Probably fairly real. Because, if you look at real life is... I mean, actual written history, recorded history is pretty violent.
Yeah. Well, I'd be pretty dark like that if I was living in Ulster as well, I suppose.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, you know. Just
to be fair.
You want to be in Ireland, but you're not really in Ireland. It's terrible.
Well, like
joking.
Yeah, the Ulster cycle is traditionally set kind of in around the 1st century AD or after that. So was it 1900, like basically 2,000 years ago. Again, that date, that timeline, again, could just be fucking Christianity throwing it in there. And kind of some of the main characters we have are Conor MacNassa, who was the king of Ulster. You have Cú Chulainn, who was actually the son of your man Lug or whatever his name is. And we talk about there, like this, the mythological, the Ulster cycle talks about, you know, their friends, lovers at some points, enemies. These are the Ullid. Maybe?
Yeah, the Ullid, yeah, pretty
good stuff.
There, yeah.
And kind of the big bad of this kind of cycle is Queen Maeve, which in English kind of folklore they call Queen Mab, which is a bit shit.
Which is wrong because it's Maeve.
Yeah, but that ties into Merlin and all that kind of. They're less popular and less cool mythology.
Yeah.
So Cú Chulainn. Does anyone know anything about Cú Chulainn? I'm sure one of us here knows.
Someone definitely knows about Cú Chulainn.
Because they've been on about for
one thing about him.
Go on.
And he killed a dog with a slitter, and he was forever my hero.
Right.
Why? Okay. Why you want to kill dogs with slitters? You are oh my God, Jason! You just keep getting worse as a person.
Idolizing.
There was 3 things I remember from Irish mythology. Let's say from school, right? And it was salmon and knowledge because I love fishing. I was class. I was like class. Fucking catch a salmon one day and be smart as fuck. Cú Chulainn hurling class, and then also we killed a dog. I actually hated dogs when I was younger because I was a psycho.
Yeah, because you're a terrible person. Yeah,
terrible person. Yeah, right. Psycho. And now I love dogs. Disclaimer: love dogs. Please don't unsubscribe to this.
What was Cú Chulainn's name before he became Cú Chulainn? And why did they call him Cú Chulainn? No, that's completely wrong. Yeah, why did he get the name Cú Chulainn, Jason? What does Cú mean?
Like you're in a coup, like you're in
hound. It means hound. Cullen was a person, so Cú Chulainn is the hound of Cullen. So how did he get that name?
And before he was called Cú Chulainn, he was named Satanto Alpine, and he played for Cork, and he was 7 foot tall.
Jason,
he was the brother of Sean Ogue.
What a piece of shit. Darren, could you just tell him to tell the story? Tell him to tell the story that I'm trying to set him up for here. Beautifully, might I add.
Yeah, Jake.
I'm deflecting here because I don't really know the story. He killed a dog with the slitter anyway.
Okay. Yeah, so he starts,
go on, Darren, take it away.
Yeah, so Satanto was born, he was the son of your man Luke, so he's kind of born into kind of everyone expecting kind of big things from him. At an early age, he was kind of doing these heroic deeds, and he was he's being trained up. And basically, the story I was told, it was a big feast going on, and Cullen, basically he put on this feast anyway, and all like Satanto and all his mates and everyone was invited to it. And the feast day started at 7. They were told be there at 7 because at 7:01 I'm setting my hound out and like my guard dog out, and he's a big boy and you won't get past him.
Oh, he's a big boy.
Yeah.
How did they know it was 7:01 back then?
Sure, Jesus Christ, wouldn't you be telling the time with the stairs and the stones and whatnot, huh?
Well, what I meant as the story, you sniff
the air and you should, Jesus Christ, you know it's nearly dinner time.
The hound is out. I'm late.
Oh, Jay, you like this. The story I was taught was they were having an old hurling match. Satanto and his mates were having a hurling match.
Big old puck about.
And they all said, right, we have to go to this feast. And they all left. But Satanto said, actually, I'm going to hang on for a few more minutes. I'm going to do a bit more practice and I have stuff.
Good man. That's what he made. County and Cork.
After a while, going to play county, yep. And so all his mates arrive at the feast, and Cullen sets out his hound and basically saying, right, everyone's in, the dog is out. This hound is almost like a kind of mythological creature himself. He's been
massive.
If you've ever seen an Irish wolfhound, it was like,
Irish wolfhound,
the not inbred version of an Irish wolfhound.
No, but if you've actually seen them in real life, they
are huge.
It's basically a bear.
I've seen like 2 proper ones, and they're both at or in what's that castle just outside of Limerick on the way to Clare?
Dare Castle?
Bunratty,
is it?
Bunratty, yeah.
It's in Clare.
In Clare, sorry.
Sorry, the Clare man getting antsy.
I saw 2 of them there, and literally, like I'm not a small guy, but like one of them would eat me no problem. They were massive. They are absolutely incredible beasts.
And
They
again,
thought about it too.
and yeah, they looked at him and Jesus Christ, looks like a tasty old morsel there. Jesus. They don't feed things in Clare. They don't even have food in Clare, the poor fuckers. They just have rocks.
Any child that goes missing in Bunratty Castle is just
the dogs
Instantly assumed dead. Like,
the dogs eat them like a
look for them.
snake.
they don't
They'll unhinge their jaws and
like these dogs when they're on all fours are like taller than most like 12-year-old kids. They're absolutely phenomenal.
But to get back to the story, just to if you ever see a real Irish wolfhound now, imagine back then before obviously, you know, the gene pool got smaller and there was way more of those dogs. They would have been colossal.
Yeah, like they're absolutely phenomenal.
Tanks.
So yeah, pretty much
Keep slaters away from, you know, the terrible
Size of elephants.
So
habit of choking on them.
Jason, you said you want to tell a story because you didn't remember it. Will you please give Darren his time on the microphone, okay? Darren, could you
okay,
please continue?
we all good?
I'm fine. I just feel very emotional about the story, okay?
Cool. So this is the bit where Jay remembered. So Satanta arrives at the feast late, and he tries to get in, can't get in because the wolfhound is blocking his way. So he has the hurley, he has the slitter with him, and he drops the slitter onto the ground and pucks the ball. The dog is coming at
Ground
him.
hurling. Whoa.
Yeah, the ball's coming at the dog is coming at him, chomping at the bit. So his mouth's open. The slitter gets lodged in his throat. The doggy dies, and Cullen and all the mates come outside, going, "What the is happening? This
You don't kill my dog."
Yeah. So Satanta's standing over the dog, going, "Sorry," and Satanta being brought up as this kind of honorable, this hero, says, "Look, I've killed your guard dog. Let me be your kind of guard and protector from now on." And Satanta's name then changed. Satanta changed his name then to Cú Cullen, which is the name, kind of his hero name, basically, which is, you know, Hound of Cullen again. So
I do think it's important though to just put in there that he didn't just like the dog just wasn't like, "What's up, Satanta?" and then he was gonna poke a ball down your throat, you prick. The dog was literally gonna eat him.
Yeah, no, like the dog was like the most dangerous thing in Ireland.
It was self-defense.
Yeah, so he just, you know, ground her and balls straight into the throat.
He was
One
told
shot.
to come to the feast and not be late. Like,
This is entirely Satanta's
he chose
fault.
to be late.
Yeah, and this is why I'm emotional about the story, because the dog died. The dog didn't need to die. You know,
He just wanted to make county, like. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. That's all Satanta wanted to do was make county.
There is also variations to that story that the reason he was late was he actually left in time, but then he'd forgotten something at the field, so he ran back and got it. There's loads of different variations, and like Darren said at the very start, which one to believe, it's up to you. Either way, he killed a dog. He was late. He killed a dog.
Yeah, so like he was late, he killed a dog, and yeah, he became the protectorate of this lad Cullen, which actually kind of, not say doomed him, but it brought on his narrative a bit further, and he becomes this pretty much, in Irish mythology, probably the hero, I'd say, Cú Cullen.
Yeah, and he would have just been a basic ass hurler otherwise.
Yeah. So, and his kind of the main stories, kind of probably the main Irish mythology story we have coming up next is part Cú Cullen, is the Tom Bocunia, which has been described before as the Irish mythology's Iliad. So it's a big, massive,
actually very good story. Yeah.
So it's a big, massive saga, and basically there's I think it's about 9 or 10 pre-stories as in like build up to it. But the main story is the Tom Bocunia, and Eoin, I think before we started, I just wanted before Owen's going to tell the story, because I told him to look it up, and did he?
No.
Piece of shit.
Yeah, there is some very shortened versions though. Like, so if you want to tell it, or I can tell it, I have a shortened version here from Ask About Ireland.
Yeah, go for it, because
but
Darren, looking through these notes, I didn't see. It's just not to pick apart your notes, like, but I don't.
I think that's exactly what you're doing though. And so
actually, here it is. Yeah, Owen tells the story.
I was just going to say, just drop the shovel, but it's fine.
You know, I color coded and fucking everything. One thing I did skip over there about the Ulster cycle is a few words that pop up constantly. So there's a word there, Michael's COMPERT, probably an English bastardization, but it means birth.
Where am I looking now? Comfort. That's definitely a bastard. To folklore.ie, birth.
There's another one, Cot, which means which means battle. Sorry, Tá But, meaning cattle raid, and Ada, I presume, means violent death. So we get that kind of the violence of the Ulster cycle coming in there, with the names of a lot of these stories.
And again, I am actually kind of useless in like Ca is fine, Tá But, you know that.
Yeah.
Comport is a tough one because Breha would be born in the Irish, I know, but again, I'm not going to question that word because there's old Irish there, you know, and aided, that could be literally anything.
So
but the synopsis version of Tá But Cúailnge?
Yeah, go for it, Mick. Yeah, I think that's fair because Owen's a sack of shit who fucked up and let us all down.
He is a piece of shit, yeah.
Just before we start again, sorry to jump in. We have the Laurna Urda, which is the Book of Don Cow, is kind of the main manuscript where we get this bit from.
Where are you getting that from now? Where am I looking?
It's up near the top of our notes.
Sorry, yeah.
But I have my own specialized notes here.
Sure, folks. Yeah.
Sure, no wonder he sounds so smart.
I do have a history degree, so I want to know some shit like. Yeah, so Laurna Urda, I presume, which is about the Book of Don Cow, which we get this from. We have the Yellow Book of Lacan, which is another one. And then we have the Book of Leinster. They're all basically a mix and match of these stories, and we've kind of pulled them all together to create and basically get this story. Okay, Mick, do you want to plow on then?
Yes. Now, as Darren rightly pointed out, this is an entire saga, essentially. So this is going to be a very synopsisized version of the story of the Tá But Cúailnge. And like I said, one site again that's good to go to, and I will try remember to put it into the description, is askaboutireland.ie. They have lots of these stories in kind of easy to digest bits. So there's there you go, words. So the Tá But Cúailnge, or the Cattle Raid of Cooley, it's as Darren said, the most famous tale in Irish mythology. It is at the centre of the Ulster cycle, also known as the Ruaidhríocht, which is, we haven't mentioned yet, but that Ulster cycle of mythological sagas in Irish is Ruaidhríocht. The tales are the most heroic and, as Darren said, the most violent, and also the most interesting in my opinion. So the Táin involves the story of Queen Maeve of Connacht and her husband Ailill, who plot to steal the sacred stud bull Dun Cúailnge from Ulster. Now, Dun being brown and Cúailnge was, I believe, the person's name, wasn't it, Darren?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So the brown bull of Cúailnge. Sorry?
Does that mean your second name is Brown?
No, spelled differently. We're not going to talk about second names, Darren. Jesus Christ.
Oh, you said spelled different, doesn't matter. Okay, go on, sorry.
My second name is O'Hara.
After the pints. Right.
Yeah. So much of the action in the Táin surrounds the efforts of the teenage hero Cuchulainn to oppose the warriors of Connacht, because he worked for Cullen in Ulster. According to mythology, most of the story took place in the area of Louth, which actually doesn't make a whole pile of sense when you think about it, but sure, look, we won't get into it. Another little interesting bit, Ben Bulben in Sligo is the burial place of Queen Maeve. Am I right? Yeah. So that's the legendary, or the alleged burial place of Queen Maeve is Ben Bulben in County Sligo. And even if you're not looking for the bones of Queen Maeve to lick, Ben Bulben is absolutely class to visit anyway. And just as an extra little, we have to create our own stories at some point. So apparently, if you find the bones of Queen Maeve and lick them, you get a strange illness. So yeah, probably gonorrhea. But anyway, Queen Maeve ruled over Connacht, and when Ailill married her, he became her king. They were both very powerful and proud rulers. One night they were sitting in bed. Actually, they were apparently fighting. Actually, not doing the dirty. Ailill said to Maeve, "It strikes me how much better off you are today than the day I married you." I don't know why he was speaking English, but there you go. Maeve's father had been the High King of Ireland, so she was very rich whammons. She was offended that Ailill thought he was wealthier.
A
Right,
bitch
too.
of a woman.
A bitch of a woman. The king and queen started to compare their wealth. The servants were commanded to gather and bring forth all of Maeve and Eilil's jewellery, gold, fine clothes, animals, and all other valuable goods. And another thing to point out here is animals at the time in Ireland were considered the primary wealth. Like gold and jewels are fine, they were finery, but animals were like, you know, if you had a shit ton of cows, you were rich as fuck. So, you know,
It's like having €100 note.
oh Jesus, sure, that'd be like the hoof of a cow. That'd be the hoof of a cow, you know.
Fuck.
Yeah, that's what they were considered. Anyway, finally there was hardly any room left in the castle. They agreed that there was only one thing Eilil possessed that Maeve did not. This was the great white-horned Finn Bannock, a stud bull of incredible pedigree. So Maeve had agreed that she did not own
everything.
Yeah, I'd say he just was like, "What's up? I'm gonna give me some ladies today and gonna make some baby bulls." I don't know why he has that accent, but he does. So anyway, Maeve had agreed that she didn't own a bull to match Finn Bannock, so she wanted to get one. She was determined to beat her husband because that's the type of whammon she was. So she sent a messenger to Ulster asking Dara for the loan of the bull for the year, Dara being the owner of Big Brown. In the return of loan for the bull, Maeve's messengers offered Dara 50 heifers, plus a plot of land in Connacht, a chariot, and the friendship of Maeve. But not the bed friendship, you know. She was honourable to her husband.
She was a nice lady.
She was a nice lady, you know. We don't condone cheating on this podcast, Jason. Dara jumped for joy at his generous offer.
Whoa, you kind of.
Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a joke. It was a joke.
Jesus.
I just wanted to give him no time to respond. It'd be funnier. Anyway, Dara jumped for joy at this generous offer and accepted immediately. He called a feast to celebrate and invited loads of messengers. Anyway, some of them had way too much to drink and became very loud. They overheard saying that if Dara had refused Maeve's offer, they would have robbed the bull anyway, which obviously is not sound. Do you know what I mean? It's just bad form. So when Dara heard this, he was furious and told them to fuck off, basically. When Maeve received the news, she was pretty fucking pissed off, and she said, right, to war we go for this old big-dicked bull. She wanted the bull and she would have it, not for its penis, but just for its, you know, its representation of wealth.
Just for its foreskin.
Yeah. Even if this meant going to Ulster and taking it by force. So she began to assemble a big old army. And of course, her husband joined her to get the bull, which makes no sense since it was going to make him lose the Anyway, some of the greatest warriors in the country are included in the joint force of Maeve and whatnot. And most of Ulster's best warriors were at the time suffering from the terrible pangs of Ulster due to a curse that had been put on them by the figure of Matcha. But that's a different story for a different time.
She was one of the two of the Dannon, and basically she was made. She was heavily pregnant. She was made do a chariot race against the men of Ulster. So she was pissed off. So she made them all sick for it was supposed to be 9 days, but it lasted months. And the only one that wasn't affected was Cuchulainn.
Which, I mean, to be fair to match it, that's fair enough. Like, if you were made to do an old chariot race in the middle of pregnancy, you'd be pretty pissed off. But anyway, because of what Darren just said, Maeve was pretty confident of success in battle. So before the army of Maeve set off from Connacht, a fortune teller called Fedel, I can't pronounce it, Phelim, we'll say Phelim, I think it's Phelim. Can't like see Phelim, Queen Maeve. Yeah. She foresaw a disturbing vision, which frightened poor little Maeve. Excuse me. Little did Maeve know how accurate Phelim's prophecy would prove to be. The prophecy is as follows, and this is obviously word for word because they recorded it at the time, you know. I see him moving to the fray, take warning, watch him well. Cuchulainn, Solemn's son. Now I see him in pursuit, while whole hosts he will destroy, making dents, massacre. In thousands you will yield your heads. I am Phelim, I hide nothing. So the army of Maeve began its march to Ulster and captured the famous bull. Due to the Ulster warriors suffering from the pangs of Ulster, the whole province had just one 17-year-old man, Cuchulainn, to defend it against thousands of soldiers. And that's where the story ends. We're not going to tell you the rest. I'm just kidding. The army made its way into Ulster unopposed. However, once there, it was terrorised by Cuchulainn. Every day he killed hundreds by picking them off with his slingshot. He killed more by hunting down stray troops. Maeve became very anxious. She offered Cuchulainn money, land, women, a big bull's dick, to convince him to change sides, but he refused because, like we spoke earlier, he was very honourable and, felt that he owed the people of Ulster for what he'd done to the big old doggo. Instead, he promised to stop attacking the army if they sent one warrior to fight him every day and if Maeve would agree not to take any cattle nor move position until he was beaten. Maeve agreed. No matter how fierce Cuchulainn was, she thought that she could surely find someone in Ireland who could beat him. So Cuchulainn defeated every warrior that appeared before him. Soon Maeve found that she was running out of men who were willing to take him on. She was forced to ask Cuchulainn's own stepfather, Fergus, this is a dick move, to fight him. But when Fergus got to the battlefield, he found he could not fight his own stepson. Cuchulainn agreed to yield on condition that Fergus agreed to return the favour at another time in the future. And that was it, really. Okay, I'll stop. After Fergus, there was only one man left among Maeve's armies who had a chance against Cuchulainn. This was Ferdia, Cuchulainn's foster brother. They were a good, strong family. However, Ferdia did not wish to fight. Maeve had to use all of her cunning, her pussy, to convince him to take up arms against Cuchulainn. At first, Ferdia could not even go to meet Maeve. She forced his hand by threatening to spread word throughout the kingdom that he was afraid. Then Maeve got Ferdia drunk and, promised him her daughter's hand in marriage. Even that was not enough because Ferdia liked he liked what he liked, and we're not going to judge. It was only when she lied to him saying that Cuchulainn had said that he would not consider beating Ferdia as a great triumph that Ferdia agreed to fight. Again, a dick move by Maeve, and you'll see Maeve is kind of a bitch, when you go through these old stories. Anyway, both Cuchulainn and Ferdia were matched evenly in strength and skill. They had been trained in combat by the famous she-warrior Scahach in Scotland. And we probably are butchering that pronunciation because it is actually a Scottish name. However, there were two features which separated them all. Cuchulainn had the Gay Bulga. Also, very interestingly, if you played Final Fantasy X, Gay Bulg is one of the legendary weapons in that. And they took that directly from this story. Ferdia possessed a coat of horn-like armor that no ordinary weapon could pierce. So the fight between the brothers raged on for 5 days. Each brought a new choice of weapon. The whole of Ireland was enraptured by the grueling contest. Finally, Ferdia found a way through and pierced Cuchulainn's chest with his sword. Cuchulainn had only one option left, the deadly Gay Bulga. He hurled a spear and it penetrated Ferdia's armour, and as the story goes, went coursing through the highways and byways of his body so that every joint filled with barbs. And that's actually pretty much the end of that battle. Cuchulainn was apparently, obviously pretty depressed after that, that he retired to get some rest and healing because he killed Ferdia,
He killed like half the people of Connacht.
Yeah, he did that too, but he killed his foster brother. They were besties.
Deserves a pint or like a Lucozade after that. Like.
Definitely. He had stopped Maeve's progress, slaughtering thousands of her warriors, and it wasn't like we were overpopulated back then. Although she had actually managed to find the brown bull and get him to her camp, Maeve was still trapped in Ulster. Just in time, the men of Ulster began to recover from their pangs. Everything was building towards a final battle to decide who'd actually win the bull and keep the bull. The battle involved all the most accomplished warriors, King Concobar, Fergus, Maeve, Ill, and due to his need to recover from his own battle, Cuchulainn could only listen from his bed to the mighty roars of his two stepfathers, Concobar and Fergus, as they fought against one another. And that was it. It's and like just to throw it in there, it's actually a pretty depressing story. Again, as Darren said, very violent. And just before I cut off, because I know that was actually even longer than I meant it to be, the Gay Bulga means notch spear, belly spear, bellows dart, or possibly lightning spear. It was the spear of Cuchulainn in the Táin. It was given to him by his teacher, Scahach, and a special technique was taught only to him, and that was the actual throwing of it. So that's very interesting. And apparently made from the bone of the sea monster.
The end of that saga pretty much is Maeve gets the bull in the end. She puts the two bulls in a pen or something together, and the both bulls kill each other.
Fucking typical.
Yeah.
Because, they were just really horny after all that messing about.
Yeah, so that was the top of community. Thanks for that, Mick. Eoin, you sack of shit.
Okay, so after that story, and as Darren said, there are so many stories throughout this period. So what two pieces did we cover today, Darren? Roriucht, so the Ulster cycle, and what else?
And the mythological cycle.
Next week we're going to cover what?
So we're going to do part 2 of this, which is we're going to do the Fenian cycle, which is kind of another series of heroes, which has a few famous stories in there as well. And I'll do a bit more research into the historical cycle, which is, it's not mostly looked at, but we can do a small bit just to
Just to
give people
cover
more
it, just to
information,
cover it.
ourselves. Yeah, and I'll do a bit on the kind of how I'll point out more times how like the Christian kind of influence in each of these stories are kind of penciled way in or shoved into them.
And I think that's a good thing as well to point out to people listening to this podcast. If you are based in Ireland, or if you have Irish ancestry, or you just have an interest in Ireland, a lot of the last 100 years in Ireland, while we were taught these stories, they weren't really taught the same as Christian stuff, because obviously Ireland was a very Catholic country. Is still to a large degree a very Catholic country. So if these are stories that you haven't heard and have an interest in, ask about Ireland.ie. Just Google Irish folklore. There's loads of stuff available.
There's one thing that's unreal. So on YouTube, before he died, your man, the Dubliners, Ronnie Drew.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he has a CD out of these Irish stories, and it's all up on YouTube now. So you get to listen to him talk about these Irish stories.
That's cool.
So if you haven't heard him sing, it's real. I don't know, like
it's a fantastic voice.
Yeah, but it's like like the voice was perfected in a pub. He was
Ronnie Drew.
Yeah, Ronnie Drew. So he's telling all these stories.
Smoked 40 cigarettes in the last hour, and then they reeled back about 10 pints.
So sing an old song.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that, like his voice, listen to that. It's all on YouTube, and like his stories about say 20 minutes long, and he has a musical background to it, and he talks, but it's and narrates the stories, but it's pretty cool.
And the way to listen to these stories, I think, truly is to actually hear them, because that's how they were originally developed. These were, fireside stories. They were stories for the tavern or whatever else. These were stories made to be told. So definitely someone like that, proper storyteller, someone who's able to throw their voice, whatever else, it definitely adds to it. And that's how I learned them, because obviously going to a Gael school, particularly older teachers, they were all really good storytellers, which is something I think sadly we have probably lost a bit. So we have come to an episode we've come to the end of episode 1 on Irish folklore. Darren, thank you very much for putting it together. I think that was really good. Hopefully everyone who listened enjoyed, if you made it way past the disclaimer, because obviously that's designed to intimidate you and quiver your buttholes. And yeah, so next time, as Darren already mentioned, it's episode 2 of this, and that's it.
Jay, what do you think of this? Is this
what you like? Watching the history now, Jason?
I'm actually very interested in the what's the name of the old boys that came over on the
Tuatha Dé Danann.
Yeah, because it splits into so many different actual kind of branches, and there's multiple different interpretations, and there's multiple different theories on where they came from, who they came from. I don't know why I said that.
So what you're telling us is we managed to crack through your stony, cold, heartless core and get some interest out of it.
Yeah.
But
that's it, yeah.
Cool, yeah.
There was next week as well. I would say I might throw in a bit more about we might do a bit more about so we talked about the Banshee, but we might throw in a bit more about other Irish what would you call them, creatures, I suppose. Like you have the puka, which if you don't know, but that's a funny character.
Mm-hmm.
We're keeping away from fucking leprechauns, none of that shit. Right, so the American.
Well, it's unfair to focus in on them. They're just trying to live their lives. Outside of the spotlight.
Yeah. So fuck that noise. So yeah. Owen, do you have any thoughts on it, or are you going to do the work this week? Yeah.
Well, like I said, I hadn't read a lot of these things in a long time, but like going back over it now, it's like, man, I remember how exciting it was when we were like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah, if only you'd read it before the podcast.
But like this was your history class. It was like, oh man, these are really cool stories, whatever.
Yeah. True. Yeah, very true.
And like that, your teacher could be a really good storyteller. Like that's something I guess we only had as our teachers. Like I don't know, it depends where you grew up, but like say my mum would have said, the town she grew up in, West Clare, would have had someone who would have come around from house to house and told stories like that. So I think that's something we didn't.
House to house.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus, how else would you be fed and watered in Clare? They only have stones.
But it was If I'm right in saying it was like a big event. So if the town storyteller, I can't remember who, there's an official name on it, but if they came around to your house, you had to like, spruce up the house. You had to entertain people.
Yeah, you were excited about it. Like.
Shanos is Shan something.
Yeah.
But like,
So,
you would have brought.
Shanos is the style of singing. I'll check the Shan.
Like maybe some of your neighbors or cousins or whoever would have come out. Everyone would have come around to kind of like.
You put out your best china and.
Yeah. He'd tell stories, he'd sing songs, whatever, that kind of way. I think that's something we didn't have growing up, but like the closest we got was history class in primary school, which was really cool. So that's what I got from it. It was like, it's cool to read back over some of these things and remember how exciting that was.
Shanachie, by the way. Shanachie.
These days, it would be like, don't answer the door to that fella. Jeez, we'll never get the house.
He'll be talking for hours.
Interestingly, there is one Shanachie, and I can't remember his name now, which is terrible, but he was on the radio recently, and he was saying that if he's ever to hand over his learnings and train someone into position, it's very likely to be an American, because no one in Ireland really has an interest in doing it.
Yeah, like some of the stuff I found on YouTube, like it's all Americans who are actually telling these stories, like, Well,
I honestly, I don't think Irish people have a proper appreciation a lot of the time for our own culture and heritage, unfortunately. So
apparently some of us hate it.
Well,
even I just love the fact that we've kind of half converted Jay into going, I might sit down and read a little bit more into that in my own time, which is I said during the podcast, that's a win for us.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's not too far away from conspiracy theories. You know what I mean? It's not.
Well, the thing about it is, if you do have an interest and you do want to follow it back, like these stories have spider webs through so much stuff. Like I said, if you're a Final Fantasy player, which is a Japanese developed game, Guy Bulga is the Gay Bulg is like a legendary spear in Final Fantasy X that you have to get. And Gay Bulg, by the way, is fed throughout so many of the games. You can get the Gay Bulg in loads of the Final Fantasy games, and that's just one tiny example. Yeah, and it is still a spear in them. Like that to me is just class.
Like another one would be, say, the comic books, The Boys, that got turned into the Amazon TV series. Like one of their heroes in that is Queen Maeve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She was a big enough character through our history to end up as a character in this American TV show.
Yeah,
but you see that as so throughout so much stuff.
But even if you go, as Game of Thrones, the cultural phenomenon that it was, like so many of those stories are just bastardizations of Irish folklore and like mythology. Now he did say he took inspiration from it and all that, but like the fact that it was one pretty much for 10 years, it was the most popular thing on the planet. Yeah. And a lot of it was pretty much our mythology, our stories,
or based off it anyway. Yeah.
Tolkien probably did it too.
Tolkien as well. Yeah. So
I think Tolkien directly used the word Fomorian. I think
could well have. Yeah.
Well, I know it's in one of the story. Maybe it's not Tolkien, but definitely in some of them.
Yeah, but like even when I said the Fear Bolgs, the demons, you have the Balrogs, which is very fucking similar in pronunciation wise or like language wise. So that's what we'll cover next week, guys. We'll do a bit more than that. We'll do the next cycle. We'll do the next 2 cycles with a bit more of these creatures, and we might even throw in where you'd find them in more pop culture.
Excellente. So that's it, sheeple. I hope you enjoyed your acid trip this week. And until next week, goodbye.
Enjoy your come down.
How did he mess it up again?
I keep fucking it up.
Do it again.
He's in the horse. He's in the horse.
And this is staying in the podcast on. Do it again.
I wrote it down for you.
But I'm not looking at the notes anymore.
Yeah. Sorry. Did you ever look at the notes, Owen?
No, did you ever look at the notes? I have a tab open on Tom Bokul.
Oh, he does, yeah. Well, sure, you didn't tell that story, did you?
I'm too late. Right.
Do it again.
We'll be back.
Do it again.
Pod form.
Nailed it.
We'll be back. No, stop laughing.
Okay, I'll just stop laughing there. No problem. Hold on. I'll just control my bodily functions.
Just mute yourself.
Okay, sorry.
We'll be back in pod form.
Next next week in pod form.
The people won't know when to come back.
Just
No,
end it.
say
Just
this.
end it there. Enjoy your come down. Jason, you say it. Enjoy your come down. Finish.
What is it?
Enjoy your
come
We'll
down.
be back next week in
Pod.
form of a podcast.
Enjoy your come down.
How can no one? Okay, that's it. That's the end.
Cut.